In this tutorial, we're going to look at the math class for performing mathematical operations. So in Java, we have this math class that is defined in java.lang package. So it's always there. We don't need to explicitly import it. Now, this class has a number of useful methods. The first method I'm going to show you is the round method. And with this, we can round a floating point number to a whole number. So as you can see, this method is overloaded, which means it's implemented twice. In the first implementation, it takes a float and returns an int. In the second implementation, it takes a double and returns a long. So let's pass 1.1 as a float to this method and store the result in an integer, like this. Now we print the result and we get 1. Beautiful. Another useful method is ceil or ceiling, which returns the smallest integer that is greater than or equal to this number. So the ceiling of 1.1 is 2. Now here we have a compilation error because this method returns a double, but we're storing the result in an integer. So here we need to explicitly cast this to an integer. And now you can see the ceiling of this number is 2. We have another useful method that is floor. So the floor of a number is the largest integer that is smaller or equal to this number. In this case, it's going to be 1. Let's take a look. There you go. Another useful method is max, which returns the greater of 2 values. And once again, this method is overloaded. So in the first implementation, we get 2 integers. We have other implementations for longs, floats, and doubles. So let's pass 2 integers here, 1 and 2. This will return the greater number, which is 2. There you go. Similar to this, we have min. That's pretty straightforward. Another useful method is random for generating a random value between 0 and 1. Once again, we get a compilation error because this method returns a double. So let's change that to double. Now, every time we run this program, we get a different number. And this number is a floating point number between 0 to 1. Now, what if you want a number between 0 to, let's say, 100 instead of 0 to 1? Well, we simply multiply this by 100. Take a look. So every time we run this, we get a different number between 0 to 100. Now, if we don't want these digits after the decimal point, we can either round this number or cast it to an integer. Let me show you. So we can call math.round and pass the result of this expression. So I'm going to cut this, add parentheses to call the round method, and then paste that expression. Now let's run this code. So every time we get a double, we still have the fraction here. So we can change the type to an int. Now we have a compilation error because the round method returns a long, but here we have declared an integer. This is one of those cases where implicit casting cannot happen. Because we have a value that is represented in 8 bytes of memory, and we want to store that in a variable that has only 4 bytes of memory. So implicit casting doesn't work, but we can use explicit casting because we know the result of this expression is a number between 0 to 100. So we can definitely store it in an integer. So let's add int here. Now let's run this again. There you go. Now, what if we don't use the round method here? Let's see what happens. So I'm going to remove the call to the round method and simply apply this casting over here. Let's see what we get. Now, every time we run this program, we get 0. Do you know why? Because here we're applying this casting to the result of this method call, not this entire expression. As you saw earlier, every time we call the random method, it generates a number between 0 to 1. So when we cast that number to an integer, we'll lose the fraction. We always get 0, and 0 times 100 is 0. To solve this problem, we need to wrap this entire expression in parentheses. So we add parentheses around this. And now, when we run this, we get an integer between 0 and 100.